There is someone in your life right now who is slowly draining you. You don't see it yet. That's exactly what they're counting on. You have been kind to the wrong people. You have extended trust where it was never deserved. You have given warmth to hands that were already sharpening knives behind your back. And the most terrifying part of all of this, you called it love, you called it loyalty, you called it being a good person. But here is the truth that no one around you has the courage to say out loud. Your goodness has been weaponized against you. And until you understand what is truly happening, not on the surface, not in the story you tell yourself before you fall asleep, but at the psychological level, in the dark architecture of human behavior and hidden intention, you will keep bleeding, quietly, politely, with a smile on your face. You remember the moment it started, don't you? Maybe you can't name the exact day. Maybe it blurred into weeks, then months. But somewhere in your memory there is a version of you that still doesn't understand what happened, a version of you that keeps replaying a conversation, a betrayal, a silence that said more than 1,000 words ever could. You trusted someone completely, and they used that trust like a weapon. You thought you saw them clearly. You thought you understood who they were. You gave them access to your thoughts, your fears, your dreams. You made yourself vulnerable because that is what emotionally intelligent people do. That is what love does. That is what connection requires. But something shifted, slowly at first. So slowly that you questioned yourself before you ever questioned them. You started feeling tired in ways you couldn't explain. Not physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that lives behind your eyes and inside your chest and follows you even into the moments that are supposed to feel good. You started shrinking, not because life got harder, but because someone in your life needed you smaller so they could feel bigger. And here is the part that will shake you to your core. They never announced themselves. Dangerous people never do. They didn't walk into your life wearing cruelty like a uniform. They came in softly, carefully, with laughter, with attention, with a warmth that felt like finally being truly seen. They knew exactly what you were hungry for. They knew because they studied you. They watched how you responded to kindness. They noticed what made you lean in. And then with surgical precision, they gave you exactly that. Just enough to keep you close. Just enough to keep you confused. You weren't naive because you were weak. You were naive because you are wired for connection. Because your capacity for empathy is vast and rare and genuinely beautiful. Because you look for the best in people. And that instinct, which is one of the most powerful things about you, became the very doorway through which they entered. Let that sit, not as shame, as understanding, because what happened to you was not a reflection of your weakness. It was a calculated exploitation of your depth. And depth is not weakness. Depth is power that has not yet learned to protect itself. Let's talk about what is actually happening beneath the surface. Because dangerous people are not always aggressive. They are not always loud. They don't always announce their intentions with cruelty or visible manipulation. In fact, the most dangerous people you will ever encounter in your life are the ones who seem the most reasonable, the most charming, the most misunderstood. Psychology calls certain patterns by clinical names, but forget the clinical language for a moment. Forget the labels and the textbook definitions. What you need to understand is not a diagnosis. What you need to understand is a dynamic. Here is the dynamic. Dangerous people operate with a hidden agenda while presenting a story. The visible story is designed for you. It's tailored, refined, adjusted in real time based on your reactions. The hidden agenda never changes. What changes is only the packaging. They are not confused. They are not wounded in ways that excuse the behavior. They are strategic. And here is something most psychology content will never tell you, because it's uncomfortable, because it challenges the narrative that everyone is just trying their best. Some people do not want connection. They want control dressed as connection. There is a psychological phenomenon that researchers have studied for decades. It's called the idealization-devaluation cycle. It begins with an intensity of affection that feels almost too good to be real. Because it is. You are shown a version of yourself through their eyes that is magnificent, irreplaceable, extraordinary. You feel chosen. You feel seen. And then gradually that image begins to crack. The warmth becomes inconsistent. The attention becomes conditional. The person who once made you feel like the most important person in any room suddenly treats you like a burden, a problem, an inconvenience. And here is the psychological trap, the one that keeps intelligent, empathetic, deeply feeling people locked in these dynamics far longer than anyone can understand from the outside. You spend all of your energy trying to get back to the beginning. You keep chasing the version of them that first appeared. You keep asking yourself what you did wrong, what shifted, what you could change, how you could be better, softer, more patient, more understanding, more loyal. But here is the hidden truth buried beneath all of that effort. The beginning wasn't real. The beginning was bait. And you, with all your depth and emotional intelligence and genuine desire for connection, you took it. Not because you were foolish, but because the bait was designed specifically for someone exactly like you. This is not a random pattern. It is a targeted one. Dangerous people do not waste their energy on people who cannot feel deeply. They seek out the empathetic, the loyal, the ones who believe in growth and redemption and second chances. They seek out the ones who have a deep moral commitment to not giving up on people they love, because those are the ones who will stay the longest. Those are the ones who will endure the most. Those are the ones whose loyalty can be converted into control. Your empathy is not the problem. Your naivety about how empathy can be exploited, that is what needs to change. There is a psychological term called intermittent reinforcement. It is one of the most powerful behavioral conditioning mechanisms known to science. It is the same mechanism used in gambling, the unpredictable reward, the inconsistent affection, the warmth that comes and goes with no logical pattern. Your nervous system becomes addicted to the cycle, not to the person, to the hope that the warmth will return. So you stay. You explain away behavior that should terrify you. You forgive things that should be final. You minimize your own pain to preserve their comfort. And all the while, they have not lost a moment of sleep. Now I am going to tell you something that very few people in your life will ever have the courage to say. And I need you to hear it completely. The reason you keep encountering dangerous people, the reason these patterns keep appearing in different faces and different voices across different seasons of your life, is not bad luck. It is an unhealed signal. You are broadcasting something, not consciously, not deliberately, but at a level that operates beneath words and beneath awareness. You are sending out a frequency that certain kinds of people can detect, and they are drawn to it the way predators are drawn to vulnerability. Not because you are weak, but because your particular wound has created a gap between who you truly are and how willing you are. To enforce the boundaries that protect that truth, you are someone who craves deep connection. You are someone who is willing to endure pain in service of loyalty. You are someone who has perhaps been taught by childhood, by early loss, by the particular weight of your history that love requires sacrifice, that proving your worth is a prerequisite to being loved, that being easy to love is not quite the same as being deserving of love. And so you perform, you accommodate, you shrink, you make yourself palatable, manageable, safe. And dangerous people see that immediately, not because you wear it on your face, but because they are expert readers of the human soul. They have spent years, sometimes entire lifetimes, learning to identify the specific emotional architecture of people they can use. They can detect a need for approval from across a room. They can sense a fear of abandonment in the way someone laughs too quickly at their jokes. They can read the invisible scar, tissue left by everyone who came before, and then they go to work. Here is the truth you need to understand fully, deeply, without any softening. Dangerous people do not change because you love them harder. They do not transform because you are patient enough, or good enough, or understanding enough. They do not suddenly wake up one morning and realize what they have done to you, and feel the weight of it, and come to you broken and honest and genuinely changed. That is a story your heart tells, because the alternative, that they never truly saw you as a full human being, is too devastating to accept. But here it is. You cannot awaken a conscience in someone who has buried it deliberately. You cannot love someone into becoming safe. And the most dangerous thing about truly dangerous people is not what they do to you. It is what they make you believe about yourself. They make you believe that you are too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too needy, too intense, too difficult, too broken. They make you believe that the relationship is struggling because of your flaws, not their design. They make you the problem in a story where you were always the target. And you, because of your empathy, because of your self-awareness, because of your deep and genuine desire to be better, you believed them. You turned inward, you did the work, you read the books, examined your patterns, held yourself accountable. while they watched, and calculated, and adjusted their approach. This is what makes dangerous people so extraordinarily difficult to see clearly. They use your strengths against you. Your self-reflection becomes self-blame. Your empathy becomes their excuse. Your loyalty becomes their leash. And the most silent, most devastating form of harm is this. They made you doubt your own perception of reality. You started questioning what you saw with your own eyes, what you heard with your own ears. You started wondering if you remembered this, NGS correctly, if you were being fair, if you were overreacting, if the problem was your sensitivity rather than their behavior. That is not confusion. That is a strategy. It has a name. And whether you use that name or not, what you need to know is that it worked. Until now, this is the part where everything changes. Not because someone saves you, but because you finally decide to save yourself. There is a version of you on the other side of this understanding that is almost unrecognizable to the person you are right now. Not because that future version is harder, not because they no longer feel, not because they have built walls so thick that nothing can reach them, but because they have learned something that cannot be unlearned. They have learned to see. Real power is not aggression. Real power is not coldness. Real power is not the ability to hurt people before they hurt you. Real power is clarity. Clarity about human nature. Clarity about your own worth. Clarity about what you will and will not accept in the rooms you choose to occupy. Clarity that does not need to announce itself. Clarity that does not argue, justify, explain, or perform. Clarity that simply chooses differently. Here is what the most psychologically powerful people understand that most people never learn. You do not need to expose dangerous people. You do not need to confront them in grand speeches. You do not need to convince them of their own behavior. You do not need their acknowledgement of what they did. You do not need them to admit the truth for your healing to begin. Weak people argue. Powerful people withdraw. Silently, completely, without drama or announcement, like a light that simply stops illuminating a room that was never worthy of its warmth. This is called strategic silence, and it is one of the most misunderstood forms of power in human psychology. When you stop reacting, you remove their oxygen. When you stop explaining yourself, you close the dew, or through which they entered. When you stop seeking their validation, when that need dissolves not through force of will, but through genuine understanding of your own value, you become psychologically unreachable. And unreachable people cannot be controlled. This is the transformation that dangerous people fear more than anything. Not your anger, not your confrontation, not your exposure of who they truly are to the people around them. Your indifference, your peace, your willingness to simply leave not in rage, not in heartbreak, but in the quiet, settled certainty that you deserve more than this. That terrifies them, because it means the game is over, and it means you ended it. Now let's talk about what you must begin to build. The first foundation is observational intelligence. You must learn to watch people longer before you trust them. Not with suspicion, not with paranoia, with patience. Dangerous people cannot sustain their mask indefinitely. The performance crack, key, the inconsistency between their words and their patterns becomes visible, but only to the person who is watching with enough stillness to see it. Most people are so eager for connection that they project depth onto people who have none. They fill in the silences with the story they want to be true. They interpret inconsistency as complexity. They mistake intensity for intimacy. You must learn to let people show you who they are, fully. Over time, before you hand them access to the most tender parts of yourself. The second foundation is emotional sovereignty. This means your emotional state is no longer controlled by how other people treat you. This does not mean you stop feeling. Feeling deeply is one of your most extraordinary qualities. It means that your worth, the solid, immovable bedrock sense of your own value, is not a variable that other people get to adjust. When someone ignores you, you do not spiral. When someone withdraws affection as punishment, you do not chase. When someone diminishes you in subtle ways that are designed to feel like honesty, you do not collapse. You observe, you note, you decide. This is not coldness, this is self-possession. And self-possessed people are the most genuinely powerful people in any room, in any relationship, in any dynamic. Not because they dominate others, but because they cannot be dominated. The third foundation is selective invisibility. The most powerful thing you can learn to do is to become deliberately, purposefully, strategically private. Stop announcing your plans. Stop sharing your wounds with people whose response you are not yet certain of. Stop performing your healing on platforms where dangerous people watch in silence, gathering information. The most powerful moves in your life will be the ones no one saw coming. The most significant growth will happen in private. The most important decisions will be made in silence. Dangerous people cannot undermine what they cannot see. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe you are still the same person they knew, the one who flinched, who explained, who needed their approval. Let them carry that outdated image of you all the way to the moment when your life reveals something they never anticipated. Your silence was your preparation. Your distance was your protection. Your apparent stillness was the deepest, most concentrated form of movement. If this is reaching something real inside you, something you have carried alone for far too long, stay with this until the end. What is coming next will give you the psychological framework that changes how you navigate every relationship in your life from this moment forward. Share this with someone who has been mistaking their kindness for weakness. And if no one has told you recently, surviving dangerous people while keeping your soul intact is one of the rarest forms of human strength. I need you to hear this next part. Not with your mind, with everything. You have lived through, you are not broken. You were bent by forces that had no right to touch you. You were shaped by environments that misread you entirely. You were handled by people who looked at your depth and saw only something to extract from. And somewhere along the way, maybe slowly, maybe in a single devastating moment, you began to believe their assessment of you. You began to believe that you were the problem, that you were too much, that your needs were unreasonable, that your pain was exaggerated, that you should be grateful for what little you received. Let me be absolutely clear about something. That was never the truth. That was a story constructed to keep you manageable. It was a narrative designed by people who needed you to doubt yourself so that they could continue defining you. It was a carefully maintained illusion, and the moment you stop maintaining it for them, it dissolves. Because here is what is actually true about you. You have survived this. NGS that would have destroyed people who are less anchored in their core. You have continued to feel in environments that punished feeling. You have continued to seek genuine connection in a world that increasingly rewards performance. You have held on to hope with a grip so fierce that people who gave up long ago cannot begin to understand it. That is not weakness. That is an almost incomprehensible form of resilience. But resilience without wisdom becomes endurance without end. And you were not built to endure indefinitely. You were built to rise. There is a psychological phenomenon called post-traumatic growth. It describes what happens when human beings do not merely survive adversity, but are fundamentally transformed by it, not back to who they were before, but forward into something more nuanced, more conscious, more deeply themselves than they could have become without the rupture. The people who have hurt you have, without knowing it, without intending it, without deserving any credit for it, handed you something. They have handed you the forced confrontation with your own boundaries. They have handed you the ruthless education in human darkness that most people spend entire lifetimes avoiding. They have handed you the burning, unignorable knowledge of exactly what you will never accept again. And from the wreckage of what they built and then deliberately destroyed, you are now building something they cannot reach. A self that does not require their permission. A life that does not revolve around their presence. A peace that does not depend on their understanding. This is the most devastating thing you can do to someone who spent years trying to diminish you. Not revenge, not exposure, not confrontation. Becoming so fully, so unapologetically, so visibly yourself that the contrast between who they told you that you were and who you actually are becomes undeniable to everyone who knew you during your darkest season. That is the real revenge, not the kind that burns, the kind that blinds. Now, and this is the part that requires the most from you, I need you to consider the people currently in your life. Not with accusation, not with suspicion, but with clear, unblinking honesty. Who in your life makes you feel smaller after spending time with them? Who requires constant explanation from you, constant justification of your feelings, your choices, your needs? Who responds to your wins with subtle diminishment disguised as perspective? Who is mysteriously absent when you need them and suddenly present when you have something to offer? Who makes peace feel like something you have to earn rather than something that simply exists? These are not small questions. These are the questions that your life is asking you to answer with honesty, perhaps for the first time. Because here is the pattern that most people never interrupt. They wait to be saved from these dynamics by external circumstances. Why wait for the dangerous person to finally change? They wait for the relationship to organically transform. They wait for someone else to see what they have seen and validate the feeling that something is deeply fundamentally wrong. But powerful people do not wait. Powerful people decide. They decide with finality and without ceremony. They do not make announcements. They do not deliver ultimatums designed to be negotiated. They do not give final chances that are not actually final. They simply redirect their energy away, completely, without looking back. Not because they stopped caring, but because they started caring about themselves with the same fierce loyalty they had always extended to people who were quietly destroying them. This is the moment, not tomorrow, not after the next conversation, not after you give it one more chance or wait for one more sign or try to explain one more time. Now. The decision to stop being naive is not a gentle, gradual shift. It is a moment of absolute clarity. It happens in silence. It happens without witnesses. It happens in the precise instant when something inside you, something deep and ancient and finally tired, simply stops. Stops hoping they will change. Stops replaying the past. Stops measuring your worth against their willingness to see it. And in that silence, in that stillness after the long storm, something extraordinary begins. Not the version of you they shaped through years of subtle erosion. Not the version of you that learned to perform safety in unsafe spaces. Not the version of you that smiled through pain and called it strength. The original you. The one who existed before you learned to make yourself small. The one who felt things deeply and saw no reason to apologize for it. The one who extended trust because the world back then still felt like a place where that was safe. That person is still there. They never left. They were waiting. The most dangerous thing you ever did was stay. The most powerful thing you will ever do is leave so quietly that they don't realize you're gone until they look for someone to control and find only your shadow.